the early hours of January 19, 1991, two American fighter pilots were flying into what would become one of the most dangerous air battles of Operation Desert Storm. They didn't know it yet, but within minutes they would be hunted, outmaneuvered, and nearly lured into a lethal missile trap. And one of them would walk away with a victory that would place his name among the top MiG killers of the post-Vietnam era. This is the story of Captain Cesar Rico Rodriguez, and the night the sky tried to kill him. The war was only days old. On January 17th, coalition forces had launched the massive air campaign that would become known as Operation Desert Storm. The objective was clear: dismantle Iraq's air defenses, neutralize its air force, and open the skies for coalition bombers to strike deep inside Iraqi territory. But Iraq wasn't defenseless. Saddam Hussein's air force had modern Soviet-built fighters, including the formidable MiG-29 Fulcrum, one of the most advanced aircraft in the region at the time. Agile, fast, deadly in a close-range fight. Captain Cesar Rico Rodriguez and his wingman, Captain Craig Mole Underhill, lifted off in their F-15C Eagle fighters. Their mission was not glamorous, but it was critical. They were Escort. 36 coalition aircraft were inbound toward targets near Baghdad. Bombers, strike fighters, electronic warfare jets, all of them vulnerable if Iraqi fighters managed to break through. Rico and Mole's job was simple in theory. Clear the skies. In reality, it meant being first into danger. The F-15C was built for air superiority. Twin engines, long-range radar, beyond visual range missiles. It had earned an almost mythical reputation for dominance in air combat. But combat isn't fought on paper. As they crossed into Iraqi airspace, the cockpit glowed with instrument light. Radios crackled. Radar screens scanned. Every signal mattered. Then the first warning came. Iraqi aircraft were airborne. Not just one pair, two pairs, 4 MiG-29 Fulcrums climbing to intercept. The Iraqi pilots weren't reckless. They were calculating. Instead of flying high and obvious, the MiGs dropped low, using the earth itself as camouflage. Radar systems often struggle to distinguish aircraft from terrain when flying at low altitude, a tactic known as ground clutter. By blending into the radar noise near the surface, the MiGs attempted to approach undetected. It was a smart move. Rico's radar showed contacts, but they were murky, unstable. The Iraqis were trying to force confusion, and confusion in a dogfight can be fatal. But they didn't stop there. The MiG pilots began maneuvering perpendicular to the F-15's radar beams, another clever tactic. Fighter radar works best when targets are moving toward or away from it. When an aircraft flies perpendicular, it can momentarily disappear into what pilots call a notch, a blind spot created by Doppler filtering. The MiGs were trying to vanish. They wanted Rico and Mole to lose track of them. Because once you lose track, you lose control of the fight. Meanwhile, high above the battlefield, an E-3 AWACS aircraft orbited, its massive radar dome scanning hundreds of miles in every direction. Inside that airborne command center sat controllers watching the chessboard unfold in real time. One of them was Mark White. And what he saw changed everything. While Rico and Mole focused on the two MiG pairs ahead, a third MiG-29 was approaching from another direction. Unseen. White's voice cut through the radio. Warning. New contact. Closing fast. In aerial combat, surprise is lethal currency. That third MiG could have slipped into firing range before the F-15s even knew it was there. But thanks to AWACS, Rico had seconds, precious seconds, to react. He turned to face the threat. Then the situation grew even more dangerous. The MiG-29s weren't just maneuvering for air-to-air advantage. They were trying to herd the F-15S. Below them lay fields of Iraqi surface-to-air missiles, radar-guided systems designed to rip aircraft from the sky. If Rico chased too aggressively, he could be pulled directly into the envelope of those SAM batteries. It was a layered trap. MiGs above, missiles below, and 36 coalition aircraft depending on them. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about protecting the entire strike package. Inside his cockpit, Rico faced a constant tension between aggression and restraint. There were rules of engagement in place. Despite the chaos of war, US pilots were required to visually identify enemy aircraft within 10 miles before firing certain weapons. No assumptions, no blind shots. That meant closing distance. That meant risk. Even with radar confirmation, even with AWACS guidance, Rico had to see the enemy jet with his own eyes before committing to a missile shot in many circumstances. Every mile closer increased the danger, from MiGs, from SAMs, from unseen threats. Mole maneuvered carefully on his wing, maintaining formation discipline. The two F-15s worked as a team, constantly updating each other, covering blind spots, ensuring no Iraqi fighter slipped behind them. The sky over Iraq had become a three-dimensional battlefield, and it was tightening. Then the moment came. Mole received clearance to engage. Target identified. Missile tone acquired. He selected an AIM-7 Sparrow, a semi-active radar-guided missile that required continuous illumination from the launching aircraft's radar until impact. No fire and forget luxury. If the radar lock broke, the missile would miss. Mole steadied the jet, squeezed the trigger. The missile leapt forward, streaking through the darkness. Seconds stretched. The MiG pilot attempted evasive maneuvers, but at that speed, at that range, there was little margin. The Sparrow struck. The MiG-29 disintegrated in a flash of fire and debris, scattering fragments across the Iraqi sky. Point one down. But the fight wasn't over. Not even close. Because as the first MiG fell, new radar contacts appeared. Another group of Iraqi fighters was entering the area. The air battle was escalating. Rico could feel the shift. The engagement had moved from controlled intercept to fluid chaos. Multiple aircraft, multiple altitudes, missile threats from below, enemy fighters probing for weakness. This was the kind of environment where mistakes happened. And mistakes got pilots killed. Rico spotted another MiG-29 visually. This time, the fight would be closer. Personal. The two aircraft began maneuvering aggressively, each pilot trying to gain positional advantage. The MiG-29 was highly maneuverable at low speeds, capable of sharp nose authority. The F-15, however, had superior thrust and energy retention. It became a contest of energy management. Climb. Turn. Accelerate. Don't bleed speed. Don't give up altitude without purpose. Every movement calculated. Every second critical. As they spiraled downward, the ground began rising fast in Rico's canopy view. The Iraqi pilot pushed hard, trying to outturn, to force an overshoot, to drag the fight lower where missile defenses might help him. But pushing hard has consequences. The MiG descended rapidly, trading altitude for maneuvering space. Rico stayed disciplined. He didn't overcommit. He maintained energy, maintained control. Then the Iraqi jet dove steeply toward the ground. Too steep, too fast at a low altitude. There is no forgiveness. The MiG attempted to pull up. It didn't have the energy. It didn't have the room. The aircraft slammed into the earth. No missile required. The sky had claimed another. Point two MiGs gone. Point one by missile. Point one by maneuver. And the night wasn't finished. Yet Rico regrouped with Mole and re-established situational awareness. The weight of what had just happened settled in. This wasn't training. This wasn't simulation. These were real adversaries in real machines, making life or death decisions at supersonic speeds, and the mission, escorting those 36 aircraft, still mattered. Because above Baghdad, the air war was only beginning. In the years that followed, Rico Rodriguez would accumulate 3 confirmed victories in his career, tying him for the top spot among post-Vietnam American pilots in MiG kills. But on January 19, 1991, none of that legacy mattered. What mattered was staying alive, protecting the formation, and winning a fight that could have gone very differently if even one radar contact had been missed, if one missile battery had locked on, if that third MiG had slipped through unseen. The sky over Iraq was a chessboard, and for a few violent minutes, every move counted. By the time the second MiG-29 hit the ground, the airspace west of Baghdad had turned into a storm of radio calls, radar sweeps, and missile warnings. But what made this engagement remarkable wasn't just that 2 Iraqi fighters were gone. It was how it happened. Because this wasn't a simple case of superior technology overwhelming an opponent. This was a layered, tactical chess match, fought at supersonic speeds under strict rules of engagement, with surface-to-air missiles waiting below and additional enemy aircraft probing from multiple vectors. And in that chaos, discipline won. The F-15 versus the MiG-29. More than just machines on paper, the F-15C Eagle held key advantages. It had powerful APG-63 radar capable of detecting targets far beyond visual range. It carried AIM-7 Sparrow and AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles. Its twin engines produced enormous thrust, allowing it to regain energy quickly after hard turns. But the MiG-29 Fulcrum was no easy opponent. Designed as a frontline Soviet air superiority fighter, it excelled in close-in maneuvering combat. It could pull tight turns at lower speeds and had an infrared search and track IRST system that allowed it to passively detect targets without using radar, meaning it could hunt without announcing itself. In other words, if the fight went visual and slow, the MiG could be deadly. Rico understood that. So instead of forcing a reckless turning contest, he fought with energy. Energy in air combat means altitude plus speed. Lose too much,